7 agents,
Yeah.
2 here or there being changed out on most maps. Ascent, though, for your standard lineups has 9 to 10 different agents that can be feasibly viable. Whether you want to change your controller, kind of switch up what your duelist wants to be, whether you want to bring that KO or not, which seems to be the only one that I would maybe say needs to be a must pick for a map like this. Is so much versatility that is there. It makes Ascent a very wonderful map for teams to, even in just a competitive environment or even a fun environment, just to throw themselves into the ring, whether it be a league or just a tournament that they have free entry to and want to have fun with it. Either way, when it comes down to it, we'll go ahead and take a look at our agent selection that we've been talking and highlighting so previously. The Ewolves will be on the left side for those of you that are watching at home, as we don't have our screen up here in the agent selection. Viera High School will be on the right, and it doesn't look like our agent selection is anything too strange so far up to this point. The Astra being the only one to be locked in for Viera's side, with Day locking it in first.
Yeah, I mean, even then, you look at each one of those kind of individual specific situations you have in terms of the selection of the agents, and especially those roles is where you really have to lock things down. So in the controller, you're going to see that Astra or Omen. It seems like we're going for the Astra for both sides. For the Sentinel, you're going KJ, or back in the day, you could have gone Chamber as well. So it's kind of already knocked down one of those advocates there. And in the Duelist, that's where you find the most diversity. We've seen Neon every here and there in a little bit of an odd situation, but you mostly get the Reynas, the Razes, and the Jets, and that's what we already see, except for 2 on one side, especially there towards that Viera side. That's going to be interesting to see, but the Sova and KO are also kind of interchangeable. You say KO is a requirement. Sova's also very good. It just comes down to your kind of play style, whether or not you're looking to be that aggressive player or just more of a setup.
We can see both of those having been selected for the Ewolves side. Arch over on that Sova, and then Monarch on the KO. That's going to be a lot of pertinent information to them. Starting off on the defense, it may not be the easiest to make active use of that, but it does give you a lot of, I would say, inclinations about where Viera may be pushing right at the very get-go, or maybe where you should be rotating your defenses to actually have a solid structure to work from. Another key factor to keep in mind for Viera is the lack of true information gathering they have, except for that Sova. They're going to be really relying on Plix here to try to find that information. They can ego swing a lot of these corners. Yes, they can watch their flanks as well with their KJ, but active-wise, those recon bolts and that Owl drone is going to be very pivotal to their success, but they may want to hold on to that Owl drone to follow in alongside Boombox or She's in My Head as they try to entry in towards the site.
Yeah, and even looking at that kind of Sova pick, and more specifically for both sides, that's going to be something that you're obviously looking at, but for Viera High School specifically, you're looking to have yourself a very, very strong attacking side right off the get-go. You see the double duelist, you're expecting them to kind of go pretty crazy here with that setup because they didn't opt to go for a jet. You need to have that money. You don't have those free knives to work with every now and then when you go ahead and accumulate those ticks. So you have to make sure that the guns you have in hand, especially considering the amount of aggression you got, when you pop these Leers, you have to be behind them. When you get those paint shells out, you have to be behind them. You have to treat those as your leaders and let them charge in first. And they've already done that and resulted the kill from it as well.
Well, with first blood on the board, another player walking into a wall, they'll figure that out fairly quickly. Viera High School now feel prepped to push towards an opposing side. Keep in mind, in round 1, you don't have that much util because you don't have very many credits to start with. So you're a little bit, I would say, lackadaisical when it comes to your actual aggression in towards the site. Some teams opt for that straight run in towards site and go for the gun-up engagement. Viera obviously playing for something a little bit more methodical, and it seemingly was warranted early, but they're running into problems here right at market as they lose 2 players back-to-back. Striker able to find a frag back in return, but another flank comes through, and the pressure from the front starts to broil up, and yet still, Viera come out of this one with kills galore. A one-man advantage to their side. However, Loomis at 100 HP and the 2 for the side of Viera that are remaining cannot say the same thing. Not even 75 HP left between the 2 of them.
Yeah, but still those ghosted hands, though. And even then sitting at 100 HP, that's going to be your just an easy one headshot anywhere else that you really want. Sure, obviously you don't want to be getting at that range threshold to where you have to go for those 2s. You want to be playing it fairly close and trying to make sure to set them across somewhere, but that's not going to be an option. To say you're just running back towards arches, hoping this utility will carry you long enough, knowing that that player is going to check right under heaven, and you may not really run into the player that you need. So go ahead, use those warps, pop those stars that you can. It may be a defuse, and that's a pretty good read there by Day thus far, but that's going to be a very obvious tell that they are now right there towards arches getting pinged out.
Day's down to 33 HP in a dream. All the way rotates back towards Cubby. A wonderful time sync here against Loomis. Both players firing as rapidly as they can. Unfortunately, for the Ewolves side, Loomis is not finding their target, which means not enough time is remaining, and Day has no problem for the reload to close and secure, giving Viera High School with a solid first blood and a total conclusion to find themselves with a round 1 win.
Yeah, that's a good start there from VR High School. I mean, already just playing out that clock. You like the reads there coming out for just kind of play it as slow as possible, knowing that you can get it there. But Day coming out there at the end, just so backing it up, making sure that obviously that spike is going to be ticking off anyways, and you're going to have to go for one option or the other. So you'd like taking those fights there right towards the kind of main areas, looking to just drag these opponents out, and even if you do end up winning that fight, they're going to have to kill themselves anyways, regardless, because you want to make sure you had that money by the end of the round. So good start here for VR High School. Got to follow things up now with the force in hand and with all these specters. It may make it pretty darn easy with Psycho here with a a shorty in hand to work with. A lot less bullets, but just as much impact if they get close enough, but you just can't find the shots.
Yeah, Psycho unfortunately whiffs that first round, and because of that, the second round of Buckshot just doesn't do enough, and it barely even tags the shoulder. In fact, I don't even think they took damage in the process. A very unfortunate start for the Ewolves, and somewhat expected considering that this is the bye force for Viera after that round 1 win. She's in my head, takes a bullet to the head, but survives the initial hits, taking down Arch after the fact. And we'll put Viera at a 2-man advantage now with full control over towards site, and they'll now position themselves quite snugly for the post-plant scenario. Day in a bad spot, does take a couple shots to the flank, but Boom Boxer will make sure that Loomis can no longer send shots their way, and they're now forced to fight in a 1v5, which is just an inevitability of time. Viera High School finds themselves a flawless round 2 and a very dominant one at that.
Yeah, what a good start here from Viera. I mean, you go ahead and mention that first round. Things were very nitty-gritty. You make sure to manage things and just get right over the edge there on the line in that 1v1 situation. But now when you get to a point like this, you've got to be just feeling like you are on top of the world once you get these two back-to-back, and more importantly, with a flawless to play with, because these bonus rounds are make it or break it. When you lose a gun in the second round, you know you're going to have enough to buy in the third anyway. Enough teammates. Even if you lose the majority of your squad, so long as you come out on top, there's no real big problems. But in a round like this, where you know that, I mean, no matter what, they're going to be able to buy in that third round, when you go ahead and pick off players like this, now that you have the rifles on the side of Ewolves, those guns are not going to be guaranteed. I mean, they are going to be robbed away. They're going to be gone, plain and simple. It's already been purchased, and even better yet, it's also going to be carried over. So you want to make sure when you have these guns, when you've been given the luxury of these Spectres and Marshals to still keep playing with, if you grab some very initial kills, it creates some really, really long lines of engagement there, as Boombox already showing the capability of that with that Marshal kill right down the center.
That's a great way to open things up, considering the fact that the Ewolves theoretically will have strong weapons to work with, and Viera will be readily aware of that. Finding a free pick like that and now collecting the rifle should put them in a good spot to try to work towards an opposing site, which, as we can take a look at our mini-map here, the site is theirs for the taking. 4, now 5 of all the players on the Viera High School side have cascaded into point and taken over this objective. Boom Boxer's in a bit of a rough state, though, down to low HP in a turret tagging them from over the top of that wall. Puts them in a spot where they're not really allowed to swing and will be forced to play against a cross angle instead. But Yubo will deny that sightline and disallow that unfortunate Raze to be joining into this fight. Day will fall, Boom Boxer will eventually be closed out. Loomis takes down She's in My Head and leaves just Plexer by themselves, and though they net themselves 1 kill, it's 3 too little, and the Collegiate Ewolves will find themselves a very good round.
Yeah, 3 players still alive at the rear end of it, so I mean, they have the majority of their squad, but every single one of them's going to have to be buying up on this armor too, because I mean, man, regardless of the loss in that round, you saw Viera High School get very, very good damage on every single one of those individuals. So that's going to be an extra 1,000 to work with, to be robbed away from the Ewolves, and even then, better yet, when you looked at that money, they were forcing themselves all the way down regardless anyway. So this is going to be just a very good standing for Viera High School with a good round like this, where you see all this money start to be invested, even then a nice little cushion underneath them as well, considering that you're on the attacking side. You're getting that plant money as well. There's a little bit of an extra layer of financials there in the back end to cushion those pockets some, just in case things start to fall through, and also to give yourself a little bit more, I'd say, utility there towards those first couple rounds. So now that those are kind of getting behind us, we're starting to get into this mid-game where you can see rifles of both teams, as you do at least see 3 on both sides. Viera just has 5, so we can see exactly how these trades are going to work, seeing that nobody's really looking for these aggressive hits with these things like Bucky's or Shorties like earlier.
Recon bolt over the top, and Psycho will seemingly be spotted off the back of it, just slightly overextending past the generator. Cool net, she's in my head, a bit of information. Psycho, though, doesn't need information, just the skill to click heads, and does so against Plixer, but it's a one-and-done scenario here, as the Collegiate Ewolves are once again on the back burner. 3 players left alive, a one-man disparity between these two sides, and Viera High School have now planted down Spike and put a time constraint in the laps of these defenders. Flipping the defense onto the attack, they must assault their own objective. This will be a proving ground for sure. 3 players back through arches and inside A main. One lingering below towards Pixel, unfortunately overextends to take down the Raptors man, and they'll pay the price because of it. Yubo to find the final blow. They'll tease that Spike for just a moment before a nanoswarm goes down to flush them away. Now try to whirlpool them, maybe off the defuse, too little too late. They'll swing for it aggressively. Boom, Boxer comes up, bang! Oh. And finally, Viera High School in a tumultuous affair of firefights. A 3K for both sides to close. Day will secure final blood.
Once again, I mean, it's Viera High School just coming out on top of the attacking side. You see these very, very instantaneous plants just again and again and again. They are consistent once it comes to the A side, and they've showed it on the first 2 rounds, but on the rifle, they haven't had a chance to highlight that yet. And now that they actually had those guns to work with, you just see them just getting even more and more and more comfortable on that side of the map. And even with that armor that had to be purchased on by the Ewolves in that last round, you're saying, surely somebody may be able to buy here. You want to keep that economy together. You don't want things to get too out of control, but you're still opting for half armor, whether it be Sheriffs or Classics. A little bit of a spread here for the side of Ewolves that they have to try and figure out. But Viera High School, you can see them kind of setting up for a little bit of a default. Possibly if they give themselves some leniency towards A, you can't blame them to just go straight forward again.
Well, whether or not that kind of steadfast mindset comes forward of taking that aggressive stance and just heading straight forward, like you said, or if they take a little bit more passive, we'll be forced to be told. Viera does look a little bit more methodical here in this round. Boom Boxer with a little bit of assistance behind them from their Sova, working their way possibly over through to tree, and they'll even find the player of Arch off the back of it, shutting down very important information for the Collegiate Ewolf side. The 0 point, the other main potential information gathering utility on the side of Collegiate Ewolves, has just been sent out towards B, meaning Viera High School, if they extend here quickly onto A, should be unknown if it wasn't for the fact that Boom Boxer makes quite a lot of noise in their assault towards site, dealing with a little bit more, haven't closed out Psycho in the back here of Jin. They try to tailwind in towards Hell, succeeding in doing so, but the onslaught of bullets still not enough to shut them down. Bladestorm in hand, and it will not matter, as Viera High School look prepped to find themselves another round win, and they'll conclude it here.
Yeah, another one there just from Viera. Obviously, it's an eco round there for the side of Ewolves, so you can't really go ahead and get too crazy about this round. You have to just go ahead and take that loss in the chin and look into the next one. Even then, regardless, some pretty good efforts out of a couple of those players. You saw Psycho able to go ahead and win a fight against a Vandal on bottom side heaven, oddly enough, with nothing but a Classic in hand. And then even then, just the rest of the team just getting some pretty good damage off, having to force these armor buys once more. But this is where things really start to switch up. You see the operator coming in play right there from Psycho, looking possibly towards the middle of the map, kind of playing towards that panel side. Because, well, you know these players love to hit A. You know that it also really works for them again. So might as well right there, just be ready for the setup in case it really does come your way.
Shot ready to be sent out. Psycho. This may be the best opportunity for the Collegiate Ewolves to get an opening foothold to work from. Think about how many difficulties they faced in these rounds and how much that could change with just a simple man advantage right off the bat. They sacrificed 1 player's life, but 2 players were there to swing, and because of that, they'll net themselves still a 1-man advantage by taking down 2 in the process. And they'll just reset defensively to re-solidify their structure and let Psycho feed the beast, so to say, with that op shot to the body, dealing with 1, spotting 2 more, but hasn't been able to collect themselves and just now to take down the player's striker, leaving Day all by their lonesome. Quick use of the updraft, a cheeky attempt there by Psycho, but Psycho is seemingly still locked down Day, and Day is in a very tough spot, all by their lonesome, with Spike not under their control, might I add.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and at least maintain 1 in terms of those trades that was going their way, but even then, 2 players remaining as the Ewolves get themselves a second round. I mean, we already went ahead and took a look over towards Psycho with that operator in hand, and obviously, after seeing enough Valorant in our days, had an idea that, well, that was probably going to be the player to really go ahead and just start going off there. Even there with a very, very good start from Yubo. So you have to give credit to that, at least towards that over on the B side, because you make the read, you know players going to be dying towards that side of the map or even then pushing up. So that results in a little bit of a rotation and Psycho allowing to push up towards those panels with that confidence to know that somebody's probably not going to be coming up catwalk anymore. It seems like a full 5 hit, and that's what really causes the rotation to go through and the aggression to start funneling out. But Viera still with having themselves a double the rounds of Ewolves. Ewolves has a little bit better economy in their hands considering that operator's already holding things down towards the side.
Slowly but steady, Viera High School trying to prowl their way in through B main. Now the audio cue's being given. Showstopper is out, and the Arch tries to collect themselves enough to find their target. They're failed to do so. Because of that, the kill will go in favor of Boomboxer off the back of the ultimate. Cosmic Divide goes down. That's 2 ultimates just in this round alone for Viera High School, trying to solidify a 5-2 position in terms of your round count. But difficulties will arise. Dallas, we've seen the Collegiate Ewolves have a solid retake here on this B side, and they've got proper weapons to work with, and they're using them well. Boomboxer cleanly cut through the wall of Yubo. She's in my head, trying to pop the Empress here, but with a lockdown being used, and the Hunter's Fury to shut it down, it's too much of a distraction.
Yep.
Viera High School dumped too many ults, too much utility, and still got cut down by one alone, essentially, the Collegiate Ewolves.
Yeah, I mean, in the showstopper, that's kind of warranted, right? I mean, you're pushing onto a site, you want to make sure to guarantee one of those kills that makes sense. But Hunter's Fury, I mean, you have to use 3 shots ever since that buff for the health of the KJ shutdown has now gone through recently. I mean, there's just so much you have to invest just to get there. And even then, after the shots you were trying to make, you couldn't hold things out enough. You couldn't protect that Sova. And so many players were sitting towards Boathouse. You saw that over-aggression in the CT. That just didn't really work out for the side of Viera. So, I mean, they know their lines, they know their limits, and they know what they're capable of doing. Sometimes just kind of lose sight of the objective and just kind of look to extend for that instead when they need to just kind of keep themselves roped up. So already, I mean, making sure that these rounds are staying a little bit closer. We now got 3-4. I mean, that's kind of the Ascent special. You got to make sure it's close. It comes down to an eco round coming out here for Viera High School. And problem is, Psycho, even with the Vandals in hand, can't really get too much done. But with an operator and you're only running shorties and sheriffs, it's going to be much more difficult.
Recalling my bot.
Oh. Striker, a little disappointed in themselves after the placement there of their turret. Not able to watch the flank, maybe trying to use a player to do so instead. But hearing the operator shots ringing their way from the hands of Psycho, I'm starting to believe Viera High School may begin to second-guess themselves here towards this A side. When a player is fiending with the op, you tend to want to avoid lines of sight and head towards an opposing objective. But you can also do something called a bait and switch. And I don't mean this as a damage boost of any kind. No, Viera High School can just wait things out inside A main and maybe try to think that Psycho is rotating to B because Viera are heading to B instead. But there's no utility being sent over towards B.
No.
They don't have a bolt going over the top to make them think so. And because of that, Collegiate Ewolves can just bide their time. And they just noticed Boombot crossing over to the winery side. Psycho somehow still managing to miss, but that's so much intel available to Collegiate Ewolves. And they now just get ready for a post plant.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the situations at default, that kind of a little bit of a false horse, the Trojan horse to go underway. There is no horse, and that's where you don't get a fake to be working with. But already some pretty good damage off, at least getting back onto that side. You had to use an ult for the retake, but even then, she's in my head, is hitting headshots just a bit left and right so far. I have to go ahead and maintain 2. It's a 3v3 trying to get back on this site, but obviously with the Ewolves, with the rifles in hand, they're able to clear these angles much easier, and you see them finding results because of it. So going ahead, push right there to bottom heaven. Find your last kill, Loomis, for a 3K on the round, and make sure to put the 3rd round win behind you, and let's get ourselves a 4.
Keep in mind as well, Collegiate Ewolves tying things up 4-4. It's been a very back and forth game so far here, Dallas. That's pretty much 2-2 with a little bit of a break for the Viera High School. 3 in a row for the Collegiate Ewolves. It's still nigh impossible to truly give one side over the other by the end of this game. Sometimes we like to make a little bit of inferencing by the end of the first half. But the way this game has been going, Viera High School just seem like when they have rifles in their hands, there's some rounds where they just hit their shots, and there's some where they just fall short on utility. And once more and more utility and ultimates start to fall in favor of the Collegiate Ewolves, like these last few rounds, we're seeing them stray ahead of the competition, which is why I believe we've seen 3 rounds in a row fall for them. And if that pace continues, Viera High School is going to need to find some sort of mechanism to catch up because their current strategies just aren't paying dividends against the defense that the Collegiate Ewolves are bringing to the table.
You're just going to find some kind of a stance here. I mean, Viera, they found themselves a pretty good start. but their holds have just been a little
You
bit
should
iffy. Their
run.
post plants haven't really been going back towards those main areas. They've been trying to hold out on these sites, and it just hasn't really been creating all the results in the world that they're looking for. So after reinvesting a shutdown kind of early on, right there in that main area, it gives yourself a free push on the site. But once again, you have to look at the post plant because this is where they kind of struggle the most, and this is where they could find themselves a pretty comfortable standing if they just learn to lock it down.
Striker will go for the plant here in high school, wanting to set up for a post plant, but Loomis, what a tag to the head of day. One shot, one kill. Psycho joins in with an operator shot through the wall to take down one more. Viera High School's in a good spot. Plixer finding 2 in a row. This could be the way that we see the Collegiate Ewolves start to struggle here, retaking this site. Plixer isolated and closed out because of it. Quick use here of the dismiss for She's in My Head. Brings it down to the one-on-one with Psycho fighting off against She's in My Head. What a hit! The jump shot! Straight to the head of Psycho, and Viera High School squeak around out of nowhere to go back up ahead, now 5 versus 4.
Yeah, big stance there from Viera, able to go ahead and get these clutches out. I mean, that's it again to what we saw earlier. That kind of spotlight the individual capabilities of these players, especially when you go ahead and shut down that Jet who has the operator just time and time and time again. The one who is actually, keep in mind, climbed that leaderboard, was sitting in about 3rd earlier and is now sitting at 1st. So you're realizing that operator is a threat. You either have to A, play away from it, or B, find a way to shut that thing down. And let me tell you, after that first round where they saw it, swinging over and over again ain't gonna be the solution you really need to opt for. But hey, there's still plenty of other ways, and you got plenty of rounds to figure it out because there's at least 3 that you can find for your side. But I mean, most that's just that's a lot to ask for. So maybe with the way things are still going, we could still see a 6-6.
Day alongside their arena, slowly trying to make their way in through arches on the A side. Viera High School, you're going to go ahead and send the boom bot out to try to get a little bit of extra intel. They'll send boom boxers quickly there after the fact, but it is shut down quickly. Psycho with 2 wonderful op shots, dealing with 2 enemies back to back, but bites the bullet of a rifle instead. She's in My Head, not done after that last round's engagement. Finding yet another target here in this one. Loomis, one of the best players we've seen on the Collegiate Ewolves side. That wonderful flick one tap from last round. They may need to replicate that one 3 more times as there's 3 targets they'll need to deal with, but they don't even get the chance. Yubo has found 2. Loomis has the drop, but can't get the sneak. It goes, but the Netto Swarm just barely taking over the ledge that is that roof. And there goes Viera High School on a martyrdom after, what do you call it when you get a kill after death? I think there was an old COD phrase for that. You would know best here, Dallas.
I cannot tell you. I mean, from the grave is what it would be on Call of Duty, but I mean, it's just, you run into things like that. I believe there's also a term in Overwatch as a passive for somebody, but I mean, in something like Valorant, you don't see that very often, especially with nano swarm grenades. I mean, you don't see grenades finding kills typically at all. It's just more of kind of there as a setup situation, a little bit of a spacer, and more of just kind of a warning of territory to say, look, you just got to back up. You have to respect it. You don't never really anybody see die to it in the meantime just because of how much it does. It's enough to go ahead and get a reaction off. Problem is, right there in the middle of the map, Psycho doesn't have enough time to react because, man, She's in My Head is hitting these shots and just playing a very, very good counter in this Dually v Duels matchup.
Arch seemingly avoiding the eye of the boom bot for the first bit. Forced to turn though, and that is where Viera High School will begin to pounce. She's in My Head takes them down. That's 2 kills total for Viera High School, seemingly out of nowhere. The man advantage handily in their favor, and the Collegiate Ewolves looked like they were heading into a bit of a thrifty round with a stinger that was initially in Arch's hand. This looks like a round win for Viera if they can just keep the tempo and the pressure. Spike will eventually start to go down. The lockdown is available for Loomis, and I feel like it would be a bit of a waste to use it here in this round, especially when you only have 2 players now, 1 remaining. But a frenzy is all that's left, and Loomis cannot find a single kill off the back of it. A 4K for She's in My Head, and a flawless round result for Viera High School.
Yeah, that's exactly why you don't go for the shutdown, because nobody really had rifles to back it up. Nobody had the really sufficient resources to be going for that retake off the back of that ultimate. You're saving it for the next round. You want to make sure to try and lock this thing down, no pun intended, and make sure you can kind of guarantee it for yourself. But the problem is, in the meantime, you already have Viera able to go ahead and stick up 5 or 4 of their own ultimates. I mean, they're pretty close to that 5th as well, considering Boomboxer can farm up both of those ults and then also get that 1 kill off. even then a spike plant as well. I mean, that would be just enough to get yourself that showstopper, and it would be enough for the entire roster to have things to work with, because Viera's just been winning these fights outright. They haven't really stressed too much for the resources at hand and utility to work with, and they can make sure to invest everything in the world right here, right now, as they just rush all the way through. Hold that W button and just get results.
And 2 kills already off the bat. Viera High School ruthless, going for the throat here of the Collegiate Ewolves side. Now knocking off the potential Blade Storm that was available for the Collegiate Ewolves, leaving just the lockdown to their name. But a Hunter's Fury's been held for quite a while, and there is no missing that lockdown's placement. 3 strikes will be necessitated, but it is still an easy closeout. She's in my head, maybe needing a little bit of a call out from a teammate, as Loomis has snuck their way through door, breaking it quite audibly and still finding 2 kills after the fact. Loomis also taking out Plixer, who pulls out the Owl drone. Day a little bit too slow on the draw to deny that kill, but they still have plenty of util set up on site, denying this post plant. Monarch with 2! What a hit, but there's no time remaining, and the Collegiate Ewolves will be forced to watch as this spike detonates and sends them into the second half with half the total score line of Viera High School.
Switching sides.
Yeah, I mean, 8-4 for Viera there to be expected after those first 2 rounds. But, I mean, with that third and then what we saw kind of in that fourth of the follow-up, even though it wasn't a round win, they seemed like they had some options there. They seemed like they were able to go ahead and get something, a little bit of momentum rolling for their side, but it just didn't seem to be enough. So, I mean, good lookings for them. Just press that W key. She's in my head, able to go ahead and just absolutely nail down those shots you can see in some of these highlights. But, I mean, they're going to completely swap sides now. Viera doesn't really have that pressure, and with that double duelist, they're going to have to make sure to make some large adjustments to their play style and their pacing.
Oh, man, she's in my head. That shot still an absolutely gorgeous and unprecedented piece of, I won't necessarily say luck, but it kind of is a bit of luck with the randomness involved when you're jumping like that. Either way, Viera High School exiting the first half 8-4. You can't ask for a better position to work from, especially as a team that tended to struggle when it came to the middle sections of that half. A 4-round spree where the Collegiate Ewolves just did a wonderful job of capitalizing with guns and the proper utility. Viera High School seemed like, well, not the right team, not the same team when it came to those 3 rounds they lost in a row. Poor utility expenditure, not great just overall positioning. They changed it in its totality, and Viera High School became a menacing and assaultive team quickly after the fact. That's the playstyle that fits them best, and we're starting to see a little bit of that kind of aggressiveness come out on defense, but it's still the Collegiate Ewolves with a 2-1 advantage.
Yeah, you're seeing the kind of just efforts being brought out here for the side of Viera to go ahead and kind of counteract that, feel that same pressure on the defensive side, but there's not too much you can really do in situations like that without swinging areas that you know are very, very predictable. So she's in my head, a little bit of a good trade trying to come out there from Arch, trying to hit these shock darts. Can't really finish things off, but definitely knowing that a player's there, that they are going to be trapped, and you cannot let that kill go underway. You don't know if another Devourers are ready.
Left.
We have the pleasure of knowing that Rainy can't really heal that thing off. But no matter what, you kind of have to overinvest to make sure the trade goes underway, because you can't let that player heal, but you can let them get some good damage off in the meantime. So there it is, Striker. A nice little follow-up there to go ahead, and not enough to get the rest of them, but still a 1v2 is definitely doable, especially when time is another factor in the way.
Especially considering that it's Day that's remaining for the Viera High School side. We'll go ahead and use their Whirlpool. Is it enough? Not enough to pull them away. Unfortunately, not placed in default, and because of that, the Collegiate Ewolves will squeak this spike down in time. Hubo is sitting in the back of Boathouse. Day's officially been spotted up close and personal, seemingly wanting to take the option of walkway. Both players in the back of Boathouse means any firefight is going to have 2 players to deal with.
Ooh.
Day isolates their doppelganger of Hubo. And Day is trying to clear away the possibility of sitting in that cubby. Right click, free gun, doing everything they can. Day knows Monarch's on site, waiting around the corner. And Monarch hits the right shot at the necessitated time, and Day will forfeit their life, and the Viera High School will forfeit the round 1 of the second half.
It's these points for Viera where you see that, I mean, they have so much potential, they have so much capability to be winning these rounds, but it's those just small gunfights every here and there after slipping up a little bit too much. It's just a domino effect of mistakes that really just shows that we see this on Ascent all the time, and these teams have to know how to lock this thing down. They can't make those mess ups earlier. You can't give up one thing for free. Everything has to come with a price. So with that last round came with a very, very large one, at least for the side of Viera, as they don't really have too much of an actual effort for this defense. But even then, with shorties in hand on this kind of side of the map, for only being 150, you could definitely get some massive plays. but nobody's really pushing it. Instead, they're looking for the middle of the map to see if you want to go into these range situations.
Shorty in hand, and Box is trying to take down Arch. Trying to keep the Collegiate Ewolves at bay. Tons of damage being dealt, but that's really it. But a wonderful swing around the corner by Viera should have netted them at least an even position, but they lose their life in the process. Somehow the Collegiate Ewolves find another kill.
Ooh.
A shock dart from Arch out of nowhere as well, and Striker will be forced to fall as well, leaving just 2 remaining for Viera High School. This is the worst case scenario for a round like this. They are expecting the result by the end. They were coming into this one with no nary a single weapon to their hand, truly. The Collegiate Ewolves off the back of their bonus, their force. Arch takes down She's in My Head. It's still just Day all by their lonesome. Classic only to their name. It got them 1 kill at the end of last round, but it will find them nothing here as the Collegiate Ewolves end this one flawlessly.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta look around like that, and even more importantly, you gotta kind of have to forget about them a little bit. Not worry about it, don't even stress it, because keep in mind, it was the same exact result during that first half. Viera got themselves a flawless second round. So, I mean, there's no real big deal here on the field. It's just the way that the defense rolls here for a little bit. I mean, or the attacking side better yet. So you have to just kind of let things work themselves out, see what you can do in a round like this, and see what players can stay alive for this, more importantly, because as I mentioned, every death in this round 3 is a lot more expensive than the ones in round 2. So you have to go ahead and see these half armors. The 3 of them that are being bought. The majority of the team not having full shields to work off of. You got to find a way to keep yourself alive and just kind of make a different case for every player, because your duelist is the one who definitely has to have that armor, and you have 2. How is that going to divvy up?
Collegiate Ewolves really warranted off the back of those last 2 rounds. Chittle's trying to play somewhat methodical here, maybe replicating what Viera High School did previously. We'll remind you that when Viera High School was playing that slow, that was the rounds they tended to struggle the most. But their play style was indicative of that assault, and they wanted to play that later in the stages to give them that 8-4 start. However, Viera High School, they lose first blood. Day was survived the last player in the last 2 rounds, the first to fall to the hands of Psycho, who now nets themselves a second after the fact. Psycho not making it back through the door. There's no one with Loomis on site, however unfortunate that may be, but so much util to dump in a player close by in Winery. They are not concerned with the after effects here. It will just leave the 4 remaining players for the Collegiate Ewolves against the lonesome 3 of Viera High School. Crossfire is there. Monarch able to deal with 1. Psycho will swing from that door frame they were lingering between, and they'll take down Striker. It is 1 player remaining. And, yeah, Down. I'm not sure what Plixter's going to be able to do here with literally 1 HP.
I mean, if you had an op, you'd kind of be like, oh, Bogdan's rolled. Nah, there's no operator on the field. There's no second teammate to kind of trade you out, kind of play for that bait. It's just a very, very unfortunate circumstance, considering that, I mean, this is the round that you were supposed to win for Viera High School, and you just couldn't really come out with it. Couldn't really feel the flames. You couldn't get that round to close out, or better yet, even start for you very well. So a 3rd round in a row going for the side of the Ewolves. This is a huge, huge half for them to be playing with so far.
Almost tying things up, Dallas. Coming to a game like this, we expected one side to have a very dominant position to work from. We honestly thought Viera High School was going to be the team to do so. When you exit a half 8-4, you get some kind of preconception that they'll be able to close things out. They're just 2 rounds away from that chokehold or checkpoint we like to highlight as double digits. That territory is, well, eluding them so far to this point, as the Collegiate Ewolves assault has been very much so suffocating against what Viera High School's defense has been failing to achieve. Every single player on Viera High School is nowhere to be seen on this B site. A total mismatch as they defended A heavily, and the Collegiate Ewolves said, no thank you, we'll take B free, and now have to hold out for a post plant. Positioning themselves defensively, Viera High School has proper weapons, I can only assume, but the problem is they spent too much last round, and these proper weapons are a little bit cheap, so to say. Maybe a bit of a Walmart bargain bin situation, as it's a Marshall in the hands of one, short little SMGs and others. They try to swing over towards Switch, they fall short in the process. Yubo and Monarch seemingly have taken down 2, but they do lose 1 in the process. This post-plant snare for the Ewolves has been so strong, with just 2 players remaining on the side of Viera. Boombot is just trying his best, but the Boom Boxer can only find one, and Time and Monarch will be the ultimate decider as the Ewolves come through to now reach and equalize at 8.
Yeah, good plays just here from the Ewolves. They would just follow up again and again and again. Once again, it's an eco round there from the side of Viera High School, so you can't give all the credit in the world to the side of the Ewolves for what they did. It was just more setting things up in terms of money and having that benefit kind of just bestowed to them. So for Viera to get themselves, once again, a little bit of damage off to get a couple of these kills, they just have to play that same way again. Find a way to get that continuity going on. Find that consistency here in the game and lock some of down these first bloods, because that's what they're missing out on, I feel, over and over and over again. We see these players kind of dropping like flies. They don't have these players that jet. They kind of act as that operator in the back of the field. I mean, Rana can fill that slot a little bit, but you don't have the player comfortability to really be filling those shoes where you kind of feel like it's a necessity.
Once again, the Collegiate Ewolves have placed 3 inside B main. But interestingly enough, they actually do have a split here. Not a default, I would say, as typically you'd have at least one player perusing the option of control in courtyard. That's not the case. Instead, a solid 3 in B main, 2 that are being quite aggressive at A main, holding arches. They're trying to bait that it is an A push to force at least one more player on the side of Viera High School to rotate, and they've been successful at doing so. Boom Boxer, we can see rotating in through rafters. That's all they needed. The 3 players now preened to go forward inside B will begin their assault in due time. Plixer, though, is going to try to deny this rotate. Once that information is there, and even a kill, they'll be able to set up Viera High School for that rotate back. Plixer takes one in a second. Hubo caught off guard, and Viera High School have turned this round back in their favor.
That's the wake up you need. I mean, to go ahead and not only get a first blow, but get a second one to follow it up, especially in the middle of the map where you know alert's going away. You know a player's setting things up. And it's Striker with a legitimate setup as at KJ to get a couple kills with a turret and a swarm. You call it. Damage has been done, and you didn't even need to buy a full rifle for it.
What an attempt. Viera High School. Huge play here by Plixer to not overextend, realizing that, yes, I may be playing to die here, but if I get my 1s, maybe even my 2s, I won't have to die in the first place. It's that simple. And they do exactly that. 2 kills. That forces the Collegiate Ewolves to stay there in B main. They feel pressure to keep pushing. They take the direct approach to site. And where else is a KJ going to put their util? Turret on that back wall. Everything else dumped on walkway. And a closed, secured position to work from. Viera High School is indomitable when it comes to a single push like that. However, ultimates, they favor the Collegiate Ewolves, Dallas. 4-1, quite literally. Astral smokes down, and I can only assume a bit more intel is being required by the Collegiate Ewolves, but they still get caught off by Plixer, who goes for the one-on-one, gets it, but dies afterwards.
Yeah, and even then, when you're pushing right at B main, you're not going for the 1v1. You know there's going to be more players there because Plixer can't really just kind of lurk around the middle of the map anymore. That coupon was redeemed in the last round. You can't do that because people are eventually going to start checking that thing. And even then, when the hopes are high and when the stress is also just kind of coinciding in that high off of it, you got to make sure to just kind of play off every urge you have. So there it is. Loomis going ahead. A really good shot to go ahead and grab off that 4th player. And you make that equilibrium in terms of manpower as you're trying to push onto this B site where you know that, well, KJ may be set up here again. We now see a turret. Just do not run down that catwalk area and get mowed through like you did in the last one.
Consistency is key. Collegiate Ewolves are trying to be a bit more consistent for these 1v1s, but they get caught off guard by Day. Takes down 2 before falling to their doppelganger of Yubo. Yubo gonna go ahead and place a Cosmic Divide? Yeah, there it is. Ball goes up. Time is ticking, though. The spike, though, having been collected. Viera High School. Look at Striker's ability to rotate around the Radianite crates. Gets spotted for just a moment, but it's still not enough. Striker pounces, and Viera High School have made a comeback to reach double digits.
A massive spot there from Striker. A 2nd round now in a row to be kind of that savior for Viera High School. Getting these last 2 rounds and getting the majority of the kills, or at least the one that matters when you see right there at the end. So, I mean, a huge stance here to have 4 ultimates on the back of that as well to go ahead and now compare with the Ewolves. And knowing that Cause of Divide was invested as well. You're going for this A push this time, and that Cause of Divide is one of the best things you can use for that post plant. Well, it's already been burned through, and literally burned because it just didn't find too much of the effort that you really wanted. So Psycho looking for an initial pick. Can't really find it because, well, who are you going up against? that Reyna, who's been an absolute menace to you that entire first half.
She's in my head. Well, their bullets are in your head, buddy. Sorry to break it to you. Viera High School, I talked about the ultimate disparity just a couple rounds prior. It was 4-1. Now, Viera High School have charged up 4 of theirs, and this is a good time to start to use them once Collegiate Ewolves, if they can get onto site, they feel the pressure to start to expend it. Knowing that the Cosmic Divide's not up, they will have a lockdown. That's fairly easy to guesstimate, and you can already assume that Hunter's Fury is ready as well. Knowing how much the Collegiate Ewolves were playing Denial, same thing with Viera just last half, specifically Viera against the Collegiate Ewolves lockdown, they're probably saving both sides of these ultimates for the exact same scenario. They want to make sure there's no chance they can be countered. They also want to make sure that they have this sort of slow passion brewing up for the Collegiate Ewolves. With a man disadvantage, you got to take all the chances you can get. Force Viera to get greedy. Force them to become impatient. Try to force them to go for a peek and take their head off their shoulders to equalize things up on the man count.
And sometimes you're going to have to make advantage of that window. I mean, you look at the utility, that's going to be a time when Tova isn't pushing. That's one less gun on the site. I mean, you can't do it a little bit too early. But speaking of the counters coming out for those shutdowns, it's not going to come underway. Instead, is immediate push where Arch wants to be using that thing instantaneously, looking for somewhat of a push out, but it's not going to happen. Instead, you were using this thing as a stall. The carrier was killed, and you can't get the thing down. That is Flexer with a play of a lifetime to guarantee that 11th there for Viera High School. Fine and dandy, safe in the middle of the map to just play it out.
What an ultimate, only needing the one to get the job done as well. Viera High School have pulled off what seems impossible in most rounds. Denial of that plant, forcing a win purely off of time. That is the only downside, Dallas, when it comes to playing into that last 15 to 20 seconds. Other games call it the 30-second meta, biding your time to the last final moment and then pouncing quickly to try to force the defense into a very, I would say, unfavorable gunfight. The Ewolves attempt it and they fall short, not realizing that in this game, their ultimates exist. You could deal with the util on site, but there's always something ready to be popped at the right time, and Plixer does exactly that to save the day.
Yeah, a little bit of an awkward start already. I mean, when you look at Ewolves and in this round just playing it slow, and even in the last one, more importantly, with all the utility being invested to get on his site, that's, I mean, Ultimate's out of the way. Ultimate's out of the game now. The Viera High School had to use almost nothing to counteract because, well, one Ultimate just went ahead and counteracted the efforts of 2, just like Boxer.
Boxer, I'm sure. Boxer's working their way with the showstopper in hand. They fire! They do! Netting a 3K before eventually falling to the hands of Yubo. And the Collegiate Ewolves, this one's gotta hurt. It is 12-8. Match point, series point in this BO1. And finally, we see a timeout being utilized by the Ewolves. 60 seconds to talk things through. And you gotta talk about not just this upcoming round, which you have to survive, but the round after that, which you have to survive. And the round after that, which you have to survive, with nary a single mistake. That's the biggest factor here that's given Viera the go-ahead. Collegiate Ewolves, they look solid in these pushes. They're making little mistakes, like pushing a walkway without clearing the util first with a shock dart or anything in the between. Like pushing a single angle a little bit too late when an ultimate such as the Hunter's Fury is ready. There's so many little things that the Collegiate Ewolves are just letting, I think, slip through their mind. And that's where Viera High School is pouncing.
Yeah, and even then, I mean, more so, you look at Viera High School, I mean, every now and then they kind of have these ace up the sleeves that work every here and there. I mean, it's these just hero movements that come out either just kind of by pure incident or just purposely kind of set up by a couple of these players. Flixie for 2 of these rounds has been that catalyst, keep in mind. That flank towards middle of the map, just kind of playing it slow, being that lurker, and even then more so that round where you had the Hunter's Fury there to counteract 2 of those ultimates. I mean, being an absolute disgusting menace for the squad, and she's in my head, able to go ahead and set that up during that first half of the map to get just plenty of kills as that duelist and do their job efficiently. So with the Ewolves and nothing but a Blade Storm and a shutdown, you only have that shutdown. That Blade Storm, I mean, sure, you're not going to have the money to really invest there for a gun, and you may use it as a compensation there, but it still comes down to hitting your shots, making sure you can find all these kills at the right times. And man, in a round like this where you don't have the armor to do it, it makes it really difficult. 3
ultimates available for Viera High School. I mean, they're in a scenario where it could be use it or lose it, all things considered. She's in my head, somehow takes down Psycho, and Able to clear away the 0 point as well, but that forces their line of sight away. And
Oh!
Plexer from midfield plays bottom mid, swings through the arch, and takes down 2. Putting still Viera High School in a good spot. Now Nate is slowly to a 3-on-1 and boom, Boxer! What a strikeout! Knockout 1-2 punch! And there goes the Collegiate Ewolves. GG no re. Viera High School are your victors here in this first matchup.
Yeah, big stance there from Viera.